Critic Guy, back with the BCG Star Wars Countdown, where I'll be reviewing episodes 1 through 6 of the Star Wars saga, all leading up to the premiere of episode 7 next Friday. Now, after the tremendous disappointment that was episode 1, The Phantom Menace, I'm sure a lot of people, especially Star Wars fans, were probably saying to themselves, well, maybe episode 2 will be better. You know, maybe they're gonna learn from the mistakes they made in episode 1 and improve upon them. And it's been a couple years since George Lucas has made a Star Wars film, or a film in general, so maybe he's just a bit rusty when he was making Star Wars episode 1, but now that he's back in the swing of things, we're gonna get a much better film, a much better product, a much better episode. Cannot wait to see episode 2. It's gonna be much better, right guys? Right? Little did we all know that that was just wishful thinking. The world as a whole was not prepared for the shitstorm that would be Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, or as many people refer to it as, including myself, Attack of the CGI. But before I tear this movie a new asshole, let's briefly talk about some of the good elements in this film. And I do mean briefly, as there aren't that many. Once again, the Jedis are the most interesting and entertaining parts of this film. Whenever there's a Jedi on screen, besides, well, he's actually not really a Jedi yet. He's still a Padawan in training, so he doesn't really count. But whenever there's a Jedi on screen, the scene is slightly elevated from just kill me now to just lightly stab me now. That's how much they elevate the scene. Not much, but it's better than what was given to us before. And for the first time in any Star Wars film, which is rather disappointing considering that it had to happen in the weakest of all the Star Wars films, but you know what? I digress. You get to see all of the Jedi assemble in one place and partake in some action. I mean, they run in their lightsabers ablazing, just kicking ass and taking names. You see people just swinging back and forth, doing jumps, doing flips, pushing people, using the Force. I mean, we get to see the Jedis in action for the first time ever. Whether the action itself was engaging or fun to watch, that's another story. But it still was cool to see. And to my dismay, this film actually gave me the one thing I've always dreamed of seeing in a Star Wars film. And that's Yoda whipping out his lightsaber and kicking ass. I was so happy to finally see that in a Star Wars film. Now, granted, I know a lot of you found it really ridiculous or extremely hilarious just seeing Yoda like bounce around, flip around, flailing his green lightsaber when he's fighting Count Dooku. But, I mean, come on, the guy is like 2-3 foot tall, imp, elf kind of monster. I mean, he can't really just like face him toe to toe. He needs to be very agile. He needs to move around, bounce around, get an advantage over his enemy. So logically, it made sense for him to be leaping up and down and all that stuff. But for years, guys, I patiently waited, counting down the days until I get to see my favorite character in the Star Wars franchise participate in a lightsaber battle, hold his own against a Sith Lord, and do it in such a badass way to boot. And for the most part, episode 2 gave me that. We already know how wise he is, we already know how much knowledge he has of the Force, but to see him actually utilize all of that knowledge and wisdom and display his true badassery, he just hits the trifecta right there. And the last good thing that I'll give this film credit for is that it does a pretty decent job at setting up the future films. You see the clone army in this film, which will obviously evolve into the stormtroopers of the Galactic Empire. You learn a little bit more about the Emperor's plan, like what he's wanting to do, and you actually get to see the blueprints for the Death Star, which I guess is just like a wink at the audience, like, hey, the Death Star is coming, just you wait and see. But the most important one is that you get to see the slow descent of Anakin into the dark side, as he's starting to embrace emotions that will pull him into that darker side of the Force. anger, frustration, fear of loss, all of the things that Yoda has always told him about, and he's just like fully embracing all of that. Now, the performance, it's not good, not even a little bit. But what is presented and how it's set up for Anakin's character is solid. And a little fun fact for you right here, did you know that Rose Byrne and Joel Edgerton are in this film? Yeah, I was as surprised to discover that myself. I mean, to see these big name actors nowadays in such small and minuscule roles 13 years ago, my God, you guys have truly come so far. Rose Byrne plays like this right-hand maiden of Senator Amidala. She's always by her side. And then Joel Edgerton actually plays a young Uncle Owen. Yeah, he plays Uncle Owen. Who would have thought? And he also shows up in the end of episode 3. Like, he's standing where Luke stands, looking out at the sun, which is pretty damn cool. I wish he could have contributed more to this franchise. I mean, now he's just gonna be young Uncle Ben. I mean, he would have been fantastic in Star Wars, in a future Star Wars, and now he can't play a future Star. I have nothing else to say that's good about the film, so I'm just filling up time. And with all that said, now we can get into the part that you all were waiting to hear. All of the negative things about Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And trust me, there is a lot. A lot. This is not a good film. It is extremely difficult to defend this film on any merits. It's terrible. Star Wars fan or not, a bad film is a bad film. The biggest problem with this film, and it's a problem that everybody addresses when talking about Attack of the Clones, was its overuse of CGI. And not even good CGI. Everything looked faked. Nothing felt real. Now granted, many people like to say that all of the prequel films had terrible CGI. Well, I beg to differ. The CGI used in episode 1 was solid. It looked great and it fit well with that film. The CGI used in episode 3 was a vast improvement of the other two. Yes, it was a bit overabundant and overused in some part, but it looked good. It looked clean, and you know what? It actually looked believable. I mean, that space battle in the opening scene for episode 3, it looks great. It still holds up compared to the shitfest that we got in episode 2. And at the very least, episodes 1 and 3 utilized more real sets than episode 2. The actors can actually interact with the background, the environment. It actually felt real and organic instead of digitalized and the actors are pretending to be in a certain area. In episode 2, there's like 1 or 2 moments in the film where I felt like they were using a real place. In fact, the only one that I can for sure say they were using a real place is when they go visit future Uncle Owen. They go visit him at the place where Luke is raised and all that stuff. That's a hotel somewhere in Africa. I forgot what it was called, but that's a real place. That was a real place. Everything else, flip of a coin. It could be real, it could be fakes, it just didn't look convincing at all. Oh, and remember earlier when I was saying whether or not the action was actually engaging or fun to watch? Yeah, it wasn't. No matter how much CGI characters you throw on the screen, George, no matter how much explosions you throw on the screen, the action's not thrilling. It's just visual noise. Like, there's just so much going on at you, so much is attacking your eye socket that you really don't know what the hell is going on. The action's all over the place and there's just no weight to any of the action scenes. The characters are still bland, one-dimensional, and uninteresting. They have not changed from the first film, and I still don't give 2 or even half a shit about any of them, or their relationships, or their non-existent chemistry. And the acting, it's even more wooden in this film than it was in the first film. How is that even possible? Literally, I could not believe how god-awful the acting was in this film. Hell, even Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. But honestly, I can't fault Ewan McGregor entirely for his weak performance, as a majority of his scenes deal with him interacting with non-existent CGI creatures, and it's really difficult to really act off of something that isn't truly there. I mean, how are you supposed to convey emotion or try to gauge what that character is thinking as in order to give a organic response? It's pretty damn difficult, trust me. So in that, I don't blame Ewan McGregor entirely. I know it's difficult to interact with invisible characters, and for what he was given, he did the best he could, but it still wasn't good. Natalie Portman, I love you. You're my babe. But your performance is still bad in this film. I mean, I'll say this, it's a slight, just a slight improvement from episode 1, but that's not really saying much, Natalie. You're a better actress than that. You're an Academy Award winner. Where did all of that acting talent go in this performance? Like, seriously. Did nobody give this girl direction at all? Where were you, George? Were you sleeping? Was this your nap time? You're like, get the PA to direct the scene, okay? I gotta take my 5th nap for the day. And the coup de grace, worst performance in this film, and yes, I am jumping on that bandwagon, Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. Can we get the blonde kid back? I cannot believe they actually found somebody worse than the kid from episode 1. He can't emote for shit. All of his line readings are god awful. I mean, many of his deliveries are just outright hilarious. Like, there's the scene where he's talking about sand. He's just like, I hate sand. It's coarse and rough and it gets everywhere. Or the scene where he's like talking to Padme about like, I hate them. I hate them all. I killed them. I killed every one of them. Not just the men, but the women and the children. That's just a little bit of what he does in the film. And oh my God, Jesus. Thank God he gets better in the 3rd one. And I truly mean that. He gets better in the 3rd one. But, oh, this performance, it's up there with some of the greatest, worst performances of all time. Up there with Ong, up there with Justin Chatwin as Goku. I mean, it's up there, guys. It's bad. And if you thought the first film's story was confusing, unengaging, and weak, the second film's story is even worse, as there's not a story to be found in the film. Like, seriously, what is the story of episode 2? I have no idea, and I just watched it. No clue whatsoever. And it has no clear direction either. Like, where is the story going? It takes so many different directions that you have no idea what path it's all leading to. And if you say like, oh, this is the story about the clone army, well, not really. They only make not even 1/5, like 1/50th of the film. You see them a bit in the middle of the film, and then you see them at the end. That's the only times you see clones in this film, and the film is titled Attack of the Clones, yet they barely do any attacking. What the fuck kind of title is that? The villains in this film are incredibly lackluster. None of them are memorable. None of them stand out. Count Dooku barely does anything in this film besides standing around, showing up now and again, making a few idle threats to the Jedi, then running away from the Jedi. That's all he does in this film, guys. Yeah, he has that little tussle with Obi-Wan and Anakin, and he kicks their asses. I don't know how he was able to do that. Then he tussles with Yoda, and then he runs away again. He's a pathetic excuse for a villain. And Jango Fett? My God, what a waste. What a waste. The only reason the character existed was to set up the character of Boba Fett, his son, who's a much more memorable, much more cooler, much more badass character, and that character barely did anything in the original trilogy, yet he left a lasting impression. His father? Down the toilet he went. And seriously, Jango? Seriously? You thought you could stand toe-to-toe with a Jedi, a Master Jedi nonetheless, with your pathetic excuse for a gun? Not only are you one of the weakest and most forgettable Star Wars villains, but apparently you're also one of the dumbest Star Wars villains. In fact, you know what? You're one of the most dumbest villains in any movie I've ever seen. Hell, at least Count Dooku was smart enough to run away when he knew the odds were against him. You were like, I got this, I got... And last and least, the most painful sin this film could ever commit: the forced romance between Anakin and Padme. Nails on a chalkboard. First things first, there is absolutely no build-up to this romance, and it doesn't feel earned. It's not like they started off with this organic relationship that has been growing over the years to the point where they can finally come back together, confess their love for each other, and live happily ever after. No! It's basically Anakin shows up one day after 10 long years of not seeing, speaking, or hearing about Padme, finally sees Padme again, has a boner for her, and he's just like, I love her, Master. She's the one for me. She is my forever love. Next thing, they have no chemistry. I never felt a spark between them. I never felt a connection between them. They just don't mesh well with each other. Never once in the entire duration of the film did I ever feel like, yeah, I feel the connection between these two. They're so in love. No matter how many times you make them say how much they're in love, George, it doesn't convince me that they're in love. Show, don't tell. Not to mention that their romance felt awkward as shit. I felt so damn uncomfortable just watching scenes with just them two. I'm like, please, take it off the screen. I can't take it anymore. It's just too painful to watch. Like, you would have Anakin just give these creeper stares at Padme. I almost said Natalie Portman. At Padme. And I'm like, is that supposed to come off as romantic? Is this romantic? Just, hey girl, I love you so much. Even the first time that they kissed, it was so unbearable to watch. It has to be one of the most awkward kiss scenes ever put to film. Like, both of the actors have no chemistry and they're being forced to share this passionate kiss that is lacking in the most important thing about the kiss. That's the passion. Where is the passion, George? I don't feel the passion in this scene. The only thing I feel is completely dirty and violated. Like, oh my God, what is this scene? Ugh, take it off the screen. And then, probably the worst of it all is the romantic dialogue between the two characters. I mean, with lines like, I truly, deeply love you, Anakin. Or lines like, you're just as I imagined you in my dreams. Oh yeah, true romantic dialogue there. Get it through your head, George. You're no Shakespeare. You can't write Shakespearean romance dialogue, George. You just can't. Stop trying. But probably the most heartbreaking and depressing thing about this relationship is that it could have worked. They could have had a strong, dynamic, romantic relationship if the execution wasn't handled so shittily. George Lucas can't write romantic dialogue. He cannot direct romantic scenes. He just can't handle romance in general. Someone else has to do it for him. I know a lot of you are going to point out, well, what about the relationship between Han Solo and Princess Leia in the original? Huh? What about that, Tony? Newsflash, he didn't write the romantic dialogue between Han Solo and Princess Leia. He never directed The Empire Strikes Back or The Return of the Jedi. You want to know who wrote those films? Lawrence Kasdan. He wrote that, and he can handle the romance properly. As for directed, I forget who directed the films, but they have a much clearer understanding of romance than George will ever have in his lifetime. And just like Jar Jar Binks before it, the romance between Anakin and Padme ruined this film. Overall, Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones is an abomination of a film. It's not only reprehensible to Star Wars fans, but to fans of good cinema. It's a black eye on the Star Wars franchise and dug the hole deeper for the prequel trilogy. And that's why I'm gonna give this film a 1 out of 5 stars. It's an unnecessary waste of time. Just don't see it. But as always, what did you guys think of this film? Was there anybody that found any sort of enjoyment with Episode 2? And if so, that's great. I'm happy that you were able to enjoy it. I myself was not able to. Or were you like me and thought it was a complete waste of time and utter shit? And let me know, what is the weakest romance you've ever seen in a film, anime, TV show, what have you. Comment below, let me know. Stay tuned tomorrow for my episode 3 review, and then episode 4 after that, then an anime review, and then the rest of them until we get to episode 7 on Friday. So until then, guys, if you'd like to see more videos on this channel, be a part of the Black Critic crew, please hit that subscribe button below. Like this video if you really enjoyed it, and I'm Tony Watt II, the Black Critic Guy. Till then, peace, YouTube.